Okay. I'd like to call to order a meeting of the Committee of the Whole of Athens City Council. We would have normally met this evening, but we're going to be interviewing a new candidate, a second candidate for the planner's position, so it seemed like a good time to meet. And right now we have an issue on our agenda. It's Ordinance 010006, which we will read in special session in a few moments. The ordinance repealing Ordinance 04504 to provide spaying and neutering of dogs and cats within Athens City. And I'd like to say a few words first and then open it up to anyone else who would like to speak. I put my name on there figuring that I was the one who did it initially. I can be the one that does this. Background, this began a few years ago in 2004 when people who were faced with the unpleasant task of euthanizing unwanted animals came and asked us for relief. The number of cats that I recall was close to 1,000. I may have enlarged it. I tend to do that over time, but there were quite a few cats, and we're not unique, I guess, in having an excessive number of cat problem. And dogs, nearly as many in the county. Some were county dogs and some were city dogs. I would say that some people are inclined to suggest that it's an OU student problem, but I'm inclined to think that it's not as much as people have said. I think it's much more overall just a problem in this area. Okay, we passed the ordinance a few years ago. There were some people who were queasy about the definition of the breeder. And so that problem was out there always rearing its ugly head. Is the breeder the correct definition? Is it a more complex problem was the second thing. Then sometime after we passed it, a lawsuit was filed that Gary Hunter advised me at various times. I said, what should I do, Gary? And he said, oh, just wait and see how it comes out. But in the meantime, another issue has come up. The lawsuit has the potential to cause greater harm to animal rights efforts, apparently, if it would go in the wrong direction. And since we may have a sketchy definition of breeder, here we are. Okay, so why am I taking this step right now to ask us to meet and thank Bill and Debbie for getting it together and calling the meeting? Why now? Well, first of all, our law is not enforced, at least as far as I can tell, and it really does need to be improved. And I'm looking for external input, and by the end of September, I hope we have something coming on the books that will take care of that. Okay, but I would also like to suggest that the problem is more that there were some good things that came out of it, and there are still serious problems out there. The good things that I see are that people are talking about it more openly, that animals need to be protected from having excessive numbers of litters. They verbalize it. My neighbors talk about the one person on the block that's the problem person that doesn't have its cats spayed and neutered, and get really indignant. Actually talk to them about the kittens that get killed because they're sort of growing out there like topsy and reproducing at a rapid rate. So people are doing this. My next door neighbor, who's an animal lover, actually adopted one of the kittens who wandered up to the house, hadn't been killed yet by a car. And so people are doing this, but it's still out there. The problems, I think, right now are more severe than they were when we adopted the ordinance in 2004. And this is what I would say. First of all, the Humane Society is no longer doing what it once did in this regard, and I think that's pretty well known. I'm a member, and I know they ask for some, and this is not a criticism, this is just an observation. This is a very small town, and I think most of us know, since we see them, there are only about 100 people that do all the work, and they're out there always volunteering and so on and so forth. Petland arrived, and I haven't been in Petland, and I don't intend to go in Petland, but Petland has its companion dogs. They brought in, at least the last time I talked to the folks from Petland, or one of the people from dogs from Jackson County, just what we need from their shelter to sell in their store for $100. And of course they have a coupon policy for spay and neuter, and you have to get the dog into the car and drive it over, at least at the time, last time I talked to the folks, to Chillicothe. That's 120 miles round trip, and then go back in a day or two and pick up the critter after it's been spayed or neutered. I mean, that's 240 miles. Is that a reasonable thing to do? And so we have new animals added to our already existing surplus collection thanks to Petland. And actually, those are the people that did the lawsuit. And so, that's why I was really willing to wait and see how it would come out. Now, I'm not trying to smash Petland or anything else. I just think that you have to call it as you see it. And I see this as an increase in a problem that we didn't need. And in addition to that, we have all the fine additional animals, the German Shepherds and things, the pure breeds. Okay, and last and not, people tend to minimize this, but there is the cat on the hillside problem. Some people might be dismissive of it, but there are many people out there who are taking feral cats, getting them spayed and neutered, and then putting them back in so they hold the territory. But some people see those cats and think of them as reproducing madly or killing birds or something else, and they started to talk, some of these people, irresponsibly, I would say, in my opinion, about inhumane ways of disposing of those cats. Now, I have cats in my house, but in some days I think of inhumane ways. But having just basically try not to be so glib about it, but really saying that the threat of poisoning stray animals is a very serious threat, in my opinion. And that sort of thing is going on, so let's not be very eager to dismiss the problem that we have with surplus animals. We have a fundamental problem in this town. It's not only a student problem, it's a people problem. And I think that I would like, in the month that intervenes, to see an ordinance that will not cause havoc on work that other people are doing come on the books. And that's why my proposal is to read the ordinance today and then have the second readings in September and try to find a new ordinance that will get us some relief so we won't have irresponsible talk about poisoning stray animals and the rest. And that's where I stand. And now I would open it up after that diatribe to anyone else who likes to speak on 0106.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Because I'm not as familiar with this problem. You said something about the Humane Society no longer doing some euphemistic thing. They're no longer doing what?
They were taking care of the surplus cat population.
Euthanizing the surplus cats.
Yeah.
Not necessarily trying to avoid euthanization, keeping them sheltered until they were able to be adopted.
Right, right.
So
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Was the last resort.
Was a very
Right.
last,
And they
very,
no longer-
very last resort. And now they are no longer in a position to care for the
Animals. So they don't really house the stray cats or...
So if someone drops a kitten at your place, it's not an easy solution to go give it to someone else to take care of.
Okay. Right, and one more question. What is this business about holding the territory?
Oh,
I'm not sure I know what that
well, we'll
means.
get Kate up here to talk about it, but the feral cats are...
Okay.
No, the feral cat, you want to talk?
I read about this in Canton, I believe, that they had a problem with feral cats. And there was a lot of discussion about the best way to handle it, and capturing and euthanizing these animals was not the best way to handle it. If they're captured and spayed or neutered and then released into the territory, then they kind of defend the territory against other feral cats, but they're not reproducing. So that's a way to reduce the feral cat population.
And where do the other ones go?
Into the street.
Well, it would be others that are like trying to come into a neighborhood.
Right,
I mean,
right,
because
right.
they're very territorial. So it's
Okay.
just a way to keep the population down. If they're spayed or neutered and then placed back in the neighborhood where they were living, then it helps reduce the feral cat population because they deal with each other.
It's law of the jungle, I guess, or law of the back hill.
Okay.
It was actually, I should credit that, Debbie was the one who mentioned that to me. That
Okay, yeah.
study.
Interesting.
Okay. Other council members, any questions?
So this is ordinance number 100, and this is what we're doing.
Yes.
Okay,
Repealing.
repealing it. Okay, and the hope is that we'll have something in place before we do the third reading, some kind
My
of
hope
place
is that,
for
yes.
this ordinance.
We will have this as soon as I get someone who is a specialist in animal issues from an
Okay.
outside organization to give us some language that they think will hold up and yet not destroy what they're trying to do.
Okay, and the next question would be is, what kind of enforcement did you expect to see out of this? Or what kind of enforcement do you expect to see the next ordinance to do?
Well, that's the point, isn't it?
Okay, that's an unknown, right?
It's an unknown. And Paul, one of the things that we could do is something I've heard you say, which is to revitalize the entire area, the entire process, the entire service. You know, put together our own efforts and charge more money for licenses and blah, blah.
I understand, yeah.
Yeah.
Will we discuss this in committee? 'Cause
We
it
will
sounds like a
before it comes up,
complex
yes,
issue.
yes.
Okay,
It's very obvious, yeah,
yeah.
okay. Other council members, they're all just here. Thank you all for coming incidentally. All right, so anybody else wishing to speak on the issue that we are in committee on? Kate, name and address, please. How many feral cats do you feed?
My name is Kate Wagaka, and I'm with the Athens Coalition for Companion Animals. I've spoken to you many times. I don't think since Bojenko or Amy have been on council, but I want to thank council for its tenacity in this matter. ACA appreciates this. We understand that it is an educational process, and I think we've come a long way, not as quickly or as far as I would have hoped, but we're still working at it. Animal overpopulation is directly linked to animal cruelty, and it is clearly part of the health and safety issues facing this community. In terms of, I don't pretend to be an expert on feral cats, but I have 5 ferals that have been trapped, neutered, and rescued on my property. They all get along pretty much, but they are somewhat territorial. And these are healthy animals. They're fed, they're wormed, and I don't see that there's been any problem having them there. Prior to this, we were getting sick cats in the neighborhood because they were not neutered, not spayed, not receiving any medical attention, and they can become vectors as other wild animals for disease, which I think the community needs to be careful about. We don't want an overpopulation of sick animals, and that's really what we're trying to work at. ACA will continue to work with council all that we can. If we can provide any assistance, we're more than willing. We're a volunteer organization. We're more than willing to help educate or in any way assist in finding information that would be helpful. And if I could answer any questions, I can try to. Any questions?
I was trying to get in touch with Lynn. I haven't done that yet since last conversation with you. So what is the process now? The cat shelter is not functioning?
I'm a member of the Humane Society, but I'm not a board member of the Humane
Okay.
Society. But the Athens County Cat Shelter has closed.
Okay.
It is not available for persons to drop off stray or unwanted animals. I believe, and I'm not certain, but I believe we are destroying cats. The county dog warden and city dog warden and county humane officer has been forced with a situation of having to destroy cats
Okay.
in lieu of euthanizing them at the cat shelter. And I'm unclear as to that process. But remember, we said one unspayed, unneutered cat in a period of 12 years could conceivably be 8 million offspring. I mean, we're not talking about a few extra cats. We can truly get over one, and everything is in a balance in nature. And if we have too many of one species, things get out of balance, and we have a huge problem. And so we need. Nancy's right. We need to curb and contain the amount, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a series of years. But our kill rate, given the number of animals we're putting down, and the population of this area, is extremely high, higher than some of the national averages. The last figures I had on the Humane Society was the cat shelter was putting down up to 300 cats a month during peak season. Now those 300 cats are either roaming at large and reproducing, or they're being destroyed some other way. I don't know.
A couple other questions. I know when this originally came through, there was discussion of chipping the animals for identification purposes. That didn't seem to fly at the time.
Well, I think chipping is more universally accepted now, and more people are doing it. It's kind of a new concept. And I myself don't understand, if you would chip a feral cat, I don't know how you would scan a feral cat, because you can't pick up a feral cat.
Okay.
They're wild, they're feral. But we were asking that dogs be chipped so that if this dog would subsequently show up at an animal rescue organization or the dog pound, by scanning it, which is a quick 10-second or less procedure, non-invasive procedure, you would have all the data on the owner and be able to return the dog or notify the owner and make arrangements to return the dog.
I also remember before I was on council, an East End resident talking about licensing cats, which I think at that time was considered bizarre, but at the same time, his point being that these are another pet running around without licenses. Are there cities that actually license cats?
I'm not sure. I can't answer it. I think that's a legal question, and I'm not sure what the state law or what I know the county licenses dogs, so I don't know how that would interface with the city.
Okay.
That's something that could be looked at, and that certainly would generate some revenue.
That was my mindset right there. Okay. If you know of any, let me know.
Okay, we can get on the internet and start looking.
I tend to.
There-
If I get a chance, I will.
Yeah,
We
very
did, when we initially started this, found 40 communities that have a spay-neuter ordinance that's viable and working. And we presented some of that information here at council. So other communities are doing it. We can do it. It's just how we're going to do it. Okay. Any other question?
I was going to ask if the paper article about the feral cat sterilization was going on, the vet person that was down working. Didn't it say that she was chipping those feral cats?
I did see that. I didn't chip my ferals. Another thing that you do is you notch their left ear, so you can identify. They're under anesthesia when you do this, and they don't. I have one that already has a notched ear because he was a Tom and he liked to fight. He doesn't like to fight now that he's neutered, but yes, that's one way you can identify them from.
So you can capture them again to do it again.
Right.
Poor
So,
cat.
but actually, I did not chip my cats. There is a cost involved in chipping, unless we, as a community, buy a large amount of chips and contract with someone to implant them. The animal has to be holding still when you implant it, which in a dog, I don't know how you would. I think they have something called a squeeze trap where they can hold cats, but I don't know how that works. So.
It's more the future, I think, that we saw there.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question about
Sure.
chipping feral cats? If they don't have an owner, I guess I'm not clear what the point of chipping them is, so you know they're a feral cat.
You would know who originally brought the cat in to have it sterilized, and who would probably know the history of the cat and who was feeding the cat. I mean, someone's going to have to volunteer to sort of oversee these cats once they're released back in the community.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not a huge task, but
But isn't the problem that nobody takes care of them? So if someone takes the trouble to feed them and chip them, I mean.
well,
they're
people
not
in
as much
ACA
as-
have been doing this. I know that there
Oh.
were ferals rescued behind Kroger's.
Oh,
And there was a shelter put up for them. I know that I have my 5 ferals where I live. I know on the end of 2nd Street, someone's overseeing a colony of ferals that have been
Oh, I
spayed and
see.
neutered, and there is shelter put out for them. Actually, we purchased feral cat houses from an a feral cat rescue organization in Indiana. Prisoners at the jail made these feral cat houses. And they're really neat. They've got a loft, and they're insulated, and you put some straw in, and you put them out, and they use them.
oh, so people actually take care of these cats?
It's a minimum amount to take care of them.
Yeah,
They're not,
yeah.
the ones I have in the house are much more time-consuming.
Okay, anyone else? Sarah? Sarah's
Hi, I'm Sarah Filipiak, and I live in the Plains. I'm also a member of the Athens Coalition for Companion Animals. And I too just wanted to thank Council for its tenacity in this matter. I know overpopulation is a really difficult thing to tackle. That's why it's going to take all of us probably to get a handle on it. But if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I think we've covered everything about the cats. Thank you.
This applies to dogs also, though, right? This,
Oh, yes.
these, yeah.
Oh, yes.
We just haven't discussed it
No, it's just
at the moment.
Hearing none. I'd like to call to order a special session of Athens City Council. We have a quorum, 6 members present, and our ordinance for first reading is 010006, an ordinance repealing ordinance 04504 to provide for the spaying and neutering of dogs and cats within the city of Athens. Anybody wishing to speak to it?
So the second reading will be in September.
It will be in September.
Okay.
Okay, hearing none, our business is concluded.